It's good to see you all, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in person. I had a medical emergency happen to me a couple months ago, and I can't travel until the end of the year at least. So I'm glad to be able to be here with you online. And as the translator mentioned earlier, the host mentioned earlier, thanks to new technologies, which is what we're here to talk about. And I'm sure it's been a long day for you, so I will get right to my presentation if you give me a moment, and I will share my screen here. Okay. Everybody should be able to see the slides. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Super. I'm here to talk today about artificial intelligence and how it cannot help to protect people from persecution because of their faith. And I'll get right to it here. The average person spends 2.5 hours per day on social media. It's remarkable. That's over a month every year. 38 days a year, roughly. And this is again for the average person. We all know, we all have had those above average days where we have been on social media longer than that. And we all know people who are on it longer than that. That means, every decade of our life, we are now spending over a year on social media systems. And this means we're spending at least over a year with AI systems. This excludes using things like ChatGPT. Now we're entering a very new era, I think, for human beings. About 20 years ago, there was an important moment that was passed when human beings started writing more software code than were writing literature. That means we were writing as a species for machines more than we were writing for people. And this now means that we're spending years of our lives interacting with machines every day as we go forward. What does this mean for faith? What does it mean for being persecuted for your faith? These are really, really important questions, especially as we are just at the early stages of the AI revolution. And if those of you who, I was a professor for many years, working with young people, and you see that they are growing up as AI natives. This is a normal thing for them to work with artificial intelligence. I'm not, I'm not a regular user of it. Many people are, but young people, this is the way the internet works and the way society works. So quite briefly, just to have a conversation, here is to discuss what is AI. Basically, these are algorithms that are designed to analyze inputs and generate outputs. They take action or make predictions based on observed patterns, and they can iteratively learn from errors. There are two big areas of AI. The first is narrow AI, and the second is general AI. We'll go forward. Narrow AI is what we're familiar with. Narrow AI is something like a chat GPT. It's something like when you're using Facebook or Instagram and it's showing you different types of content, or you get shopping recommendations or advertisements. General AI is the stuff of science fiction. It's the AI that can do everything, act like a human being. It's also what many of these very large AI companies, again, like OpenAI, are aiming to develop. And importantly, for us going forward in this presentation, is to understand, what are algorithms that power artificial intelligence systems. These algorithms are, as a quote I heard at a conference, an opinion expressed in math. They're groups of instructions for computers which guide the computer to process the input data. These systems are developed by people, right? Human beings are developing the algorithms. Their development of the algorithms reflects their geography, their social and cultural practices, social class, race, gender, their religious biases, whether that's conscious or unconscious, etc. So you can already see some problems potentially emerging for persecution and for faith here. And what are algorithms for? Again, they power AI, and they're good at classifying topics, making categories, predicting based on input data. They can identify patterns and similarities and identify anomalies or mistakes. So as you can see there, it's a very limited definition of what it means to be human. And at this time, and I really appreciate the invitation to be at this conference. And again, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in person because I think it could be a very rich conversation. When we think about religious persecution, I think with artificial intelligence systems, we need to be rethinking what persecution looks like. And I've worked in human rights since 2009 for a very long time now. And, persecution in 2009, religious persecution looked a certain way at that time. And I think it's really going to be shifting as we have generations of artificial intelligence natives, as young people, and as AI systems, whether we want them to or not, become more inserted into our lives. As I mentioned earlier, algorithms are developed by human beings. These human beings have certain, biases. They may not like certain religions. They may want to target certain religions. So when you have an AI system, what does persecution look like in that regard? And how does our faith perhaps change in the face of artificial intelligence systems? If we are spending over a year of our lives every 10 years interacting with AI systems, that will have an impact on faith, and particularly for young people. Briefly, I'm going to talk about several types of categories of how AI might impact religious persecution and faith. The first is going to be focusing on AI on social media, right? Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. Then I'll talk a little bit about generative artificial intelligence, which we're all familiar with. And then I'll also talk about AI beyond social media. So we can have a more of a holistic perspective because we're interacting with AI in many different spheres now. Just a few years ago, I used to only talk about AI and social media. Now it's expanded everywhere. So there are two key ways in which we encounter AI and social media, and it has an impact potentially on persecution. The first is in content moderation, and the second is in content display. Content moderation is what actually exists on social media, what you can find if you search, Instagram, and content display is what you see sorted for you on Instagram when you go into your feed or you go into Facebook. Or you see your Google search results, even though that's not social media, it's a similar concept. So with content moderation, this means that the artificial intelligence systems are being programmed to remove certain types of content from systems. So you can never find it. You cannot see it at all. An easy example of this is several years ago, when ISIS was really quite in the ascendant in Syria, YouTube, which is owned by Google, developed artificial intelligence systems that would detect the ISIS flag and listen for ISIS slogans and automatically delete these videos so that they couldn't be seen as part of recruitment drives for ISIS. But this meant you couldn't find them if you were trying to document human rights abuses. This meant you couldn't, if you were trying to hold the people who were perpetrating crimes accountable, those videos didn't exist. With content moderation, these AI systems can remove religious content. Perhaps, I've done a lot of human rights work in Iran. You could develop AI systems that would remove Christianity from the internet. You couldn't even search if you were curious about Jesus. You couldn't even search his name, for example. It can also remove the ability to practice one's faith online. There are many faith communities where the only way to interact with other members of the faith is through the internet. Whether it's because it's a religious minority, it's remote, perhaps the head of the faith or the bulk of the believers are overseas, as we sometimes see in the Catholic Church, where there be very small groups of practitioners. And with content moderation, AI systems could eliminate that ability for the faith to be practiced online, which is increasingly a very important component. And with AI systems, you can actually be able to train the data in such a way that through content moderation, it will overly focus on, removing content that could be related to religious minorities as well. With content display, which is sometimes called personalization, this is what you see online. Content moderation, again, is what exists. Content display is what you see. So the content can still exist whether or not you see it. As in an Instagram account you may follow, it's still there even if you don't follow it. But when you follow it, then you can see its content. And I find this one particularly problematic because content moderation, I think we understand from a censorship perspective, but content display manipulates what kind of information we see in our news feeds. What we can see here is automated recommendations can actually out persecuted religious minority groups or individuals. We see this in friend recommendation systems where people who are part of religious minorities must be very careful at how they're navigating their online profiles because it may recommend them certain content that could put them in trouble with authorities. If they're part of for example, a Christian group that is practicing in secret, all of a sudden they may get Christian content recommended to them. This can be a problem for the police authorities and result in additional persecution. The type of content that can be shown can influence how you may feel about your own faith, how you may see your own faith. This can be done as a deliberate way to weaken a faith, right? Governments can actually, which we'll talk about in a little bit, governments can put data and information into AI systems to make people think that their religion is bad, that they're, if they're Christians, that their Christian faith is something wrong, it's heretical, etc. Or it can be used to intimidate them that if you are a Christian, for example, you are going to get arrested. And this can be done in a very subtle way, not something deliberate as in the propaganda of the past. Certain types of content for certain religions may be deprioritized. They may not have outright censorship, but good luck finding any content, for example, on Christianity or Buddhism or whatever it might be. And recommendations, we all see, you may want to, at the end of YouTube, there's a recommended little, a screen that comes up that recommends other videos to watch. That can be manipulated via AI systems to further reinforce certain dominant religious opinions. When we think about minority, for example, Christian communities around the world, this may further make them marginalized. So from content moderation and display, this can, be used to exacerbate targeting or repression of certain religions. It can consciously or unconsciously promote certain religious values and beliefs over others. And very importantly, it can have unknown impacts on the development of faith, especially in young people. When young people are really starting to explore, their religious values and what they believe in and how they see their purpose of life and their purpose in this universe, if these systems are designed in a certain way to reinforce certain religious perspectives, this can result in weakening of faith for young people. It can result in them, not feeling comfortable or confident in their religious values. I believe it will be a major problem for religion going forward. On to generative AI, and I'm sorry I'm going quite quickly. It's a broad topic, and we want to have some space for discussion. Generative AI, as this is the stuff like ChatGPT. Basically, it identifies patterns. It creates new audio, video, images, text-based content out of previously existing content. And then it uses this, the systems are designed to take your input, your question, your prompt that you might put into ChatGPT and generate an answer which the system believes you will believe. So they're not actually here to answer your question, they're more to get you to believe them. And this is, for example, and it's trained on work that other people have done. A lot of it is Wikipedia data, and a lot of it is, books, news articles, forum posts, etc., blogs, all those things. So from the perspective in terms of social media, generative AI is being used for content creation. We are seeing it being used in every major newspaper, television stations. It is being used in movies and video games everywhere. You can also use it to summarize articles. Many of us, when you do a Google search now, you get an AI summary at the top. Sometimes that summary is completely false. My wife and I were looking up showtimes for a movie that had very limited showings here in California, and I was just curious about how the system accurate it was, and I asked it where it was showing near where we live, and it said it was showing at our local movie theater, which I knew to be 100% false. So these little summaries also, you can't trust them for something as basic as a movie showtime. And these generative AI systems are also used to generate viral content. Whether this content is true or not is a separate issue. We have seen a lot of fake videos being generated, for example, with regards to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. When we think about ways that generative AI can harm faith, we have three different aspects. And again, I'm happy to have questions about this. I know this could be a lot for those of you who are not familiar with AI systems. First, we have the data that is used. As I mentioned, ChatGPT is trained on enormous amounts of text that has been created by people. If that text, for example, has an anti-Christian bias, ChatGPT will answer, negatively about Christianity. This is simply how the system is designed. So and if the engineers, who are developing these systems from the input harms perspective, as you see here on the screen, if they have an anti-religious bias, the system will reflect that, and its answers will reflect that. The output harms are what I call the output harms are the messages embedded in the answer, for example. So first is what we put into the system, right? What we put into the oven, so to speak, the ingredients. The second is what we get out of the oven, the output harms. How ChatGPT, for example, answers our questions. If we ask about certain questions about faith or religion, for especially young people who they go to these systems to ask these questions. What might it show? What might persecution look like in a subtle way in this way? You can, if you ask ChatGPT religious questions, you can get very slippery answers. And these are very important things, especially as young people are having ChatGPT on their phone and interacting with it regularly. In fact, just yesterday, actually, now that I mention it, I was on the bus, and there was a young woman. I was standing up, about to get off at my stop, and a young woman was asking ChatGPT for relationship advice right in front of me. It was right in front of me. I just happened to see it, and she wished ChatGPT a nice day. This is the level, these are the kind of interactions that we're having with very young people. And in terms of amplification harms, this is when generative AI outputs are then shared. For example, we do see in Iran a lot of anti-Christian content being created, and across many authoritarian countries, dictatorships around the world. This content then spreads that Christians, for example, are murdering young girls or eating young girls that we see. This is, of course, fake. But this content then spreads, becomes viral. It costs nothing to make it. It costs a few cents for every euro to make it. It's basically free, and it can spread through automated systems quite easily without you having to do anything. This can impact also in terms of what kind of content we consume, our mental health, and our relationship to God and to faith. Beyond social media, and then we're just about finished here. So the social media stuff, I think alone is quite disturbing for me in terms of persecution, in terms of subtle levels of persecution. But beyond social media, AI systems can be used to effectively track religious minorities through different types of recognition. Facial recognition we are familiar with. There's what's called gait recognition, which is an up-and-coming system. This is how you gesture, as you just see that I made a move on the screen, how you walk, how your body naturally moves. With facial recognition, we can wear a mask. You can cut your hair. If you're a man, you can grow facial hair or remove your facial hair, and can confuse these systems. Gait recognition is much more difficult. If you're part of a Christian minority, let's say, and you've been identified by the police, they can film you how you walk, and then they can identify you by how you walk, how you move your hands, and track you automatically. This is being done in parts of China right now. Persona recognition involves recognizing how you speak online, what you engage with online to develop profiles which can be used to persecute you further. Perhaps you speak in a certain cadence, or you have a certain type of an accent. These systems can then identify that, build online dossiers, and then track your behavior online, and then actually then be used to arrest you by security services. Earlier, I mentioned how ChatGPT is trained on lots of data. These AI systems and these chatbots are everywhere. There's a million you can download now. If you go to if you use WhatsApp, you can see Meta has inserted many different types of chatbots you can interact with. The data that these chatbots draw from to interact with you can be poisoned deliberately. Content that's anti-Christian, for example, can be put there specifically, or anti-any religion can be put there specifically to what's called poison the data. This can be done deliberately, or this can be done in what's called stealth poisoning, which is either slowly over time or in very subtle ways in order to subtly manipulate you to not believe in your faith, or to view a certain faith in a hostile way in terms of persecution. AI systems beyond social media can turbocharge surveillance. Now it used to be with authoritarian regimes, which is where my expertise is, you needed to have hundreds of analysts combing through, for example, people's phone records or text messages or emails or letters. And now you can have one AI system do a lot of that, and the AI system never sleeps. There is online automated harassment. There are companies now, many of them based in Russia, where you can you can pay the company to develop AI systems that will automatically harass people online and be unstoppable. They will create fake accounts, and these accounts will attack and assault people, with death threats, etc. This is being used to target and harass religious minorities in countries, and it's very cheap, maybe 100 euros a month. You can get these systems to do this for you. Disinformation, I think we all know how beyond social media, AI systems can be used to do that through generating fake videos, fake content, model manipulation. So all the data that these ChatGPT, for example, is trained on, much of it can contain sensitive PII, it's called personal identifiable information. And very sophisticated prompt engineers, people who interact with AI systems, can manipulate models to reveal personally identifiable information. This can be done by governments to be able to identify people who are parts of religious minorities, who are practicing their faith in secret, etc. Secondly, with regards to actual engagement with AI systems, if you do a ChatGPT query, this can be monitored by the government potentially. They can see what kind of queries are you making. We have seen in many authoritarian government countries, and in fact, we've seen with Christian minorities that their Google searches many years ago, before it was encrypted, were used against them in court. Were used to prove that they were part of the Christian faith. And then we can have what are called chatbot honeypots. A honeypot is a system designed to lure people in. Like you put some honey out there and the bees come. And authoritarian governments can create fake chatbots, even ones focused on religion, where many young people are again turning to faith-based chatbots to explore their faith. These can actually then be run by governments, and they're actually designed to attract people, and then they're locating where these people are so they can be arrested or persecuted. I have a variety of solutions, but I think in the interest of time, I'll go over to questions now, and we can discuss solutions if that's of interest. Thank you again for your time. I hope this was of interest to you. I know we covered a lot in a short span of time, and I look forward to your questions and to the conversation. Thank you.
Tak děkujeme. No, tak teď